education in South Africa. It's something I'm quite passionate about because I feel that education is one of the pillars of society that helps people uplift themselves and improve their situation. And that's something we desperately need in South Africa. I'm here tonight. I literally Googled this event a couple of days ago. Working on my own startup, I want to get to know what the startup environment is like in Cape Town. I haven't really been exposed to it before. And I'm looking to meet new people that can inspire me and hopefully learn a lot more about what I can do here in Cape Town.
Hi, I'm Mike Brunsky. It's great being here at Startup Grind tonight. I am a blockchain investor, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm involved in property and media, in cryptocurrencies. And I'm here tonight to meet some cool people, to network, to learn a few things, and see what else is happening in Cape Town.
What we came for, right? I'd like to introduce our guest for today. He is the founder and CEO of RecoMed, which is the largest platform for booking doctors in Southern Africa. It's also the platform that powers a lot of hospitals. Some of you, if you went to booking sites for some of the big hospitals, you actually used his platform. And he founded a company called Personera, which got sold. He moved to the US, it was New York. He moved back to Cape Town and started Springlab. And now he's the founder, and now he's doing very well in his new venture. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause for Amod Sheraan.
Thank you.
Welcome. You can take a seat. Welcome to Startup Grind.
Thanks.
Awesome. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, you really know how to build up an event, right? I was just thinking, you've got it down. You know, now I really have to deliver. If they don't laugh within 3 minutes, they're gonna start streaming out of here, I think.
Yeah.
But,
we'll find a plan B.
But I did enjoy you introducing Mbali. I could see the color draining from her face as you were talking about credit card debt. And you know, I always like to say in startups, having raised quite a lot of funding now, you know, a banker is someone who gives you an umbrella when the sun is shining, but takes it away as soon as it starts to rain, right? But I'm just kidding. I mean, we do bank with Standard Bank, so I thought I'd throw that in.
He starts by firing shots. Great. Okay, welcome to Startup Grind, Sheraan. And Startup Grind, it's a wonderful conversation we have and want to know about you. Where were you born and where do you grow up?
So I was born in Durban, in the sugarcane fields. No, I'm kidding. But I actually did live next door to a sugarcane. I actually did live next door to a sugarcane field. Lots of green and black mambas found in the garden growing up. I was born in Durban, so yeah, typical Durban background. Went to school, left home at 18, and went to UCT. I've been a techie my whole life. So I started programming when I was 11 years old. I never stopped. As far as I could remember, I was always the youngest engineer, and I was a nerd and a geek, and I wear those titles pretty proudly. In fact, we're very much looking forward to starting our first Dungeons & Dragons game at the office from tomorrow, so nothing's changed. And I moved to Cape Town to study electrical and computer engineering. Funnily enough, out of a class of, this is part of the problem with the country, out of a class of 84, we graduated 12 in 4 years, no females. So this is part of, it's an interesting thing we notice immediately in terms of how the deck gets stacked at a young age, right? And then I went into my master's and dropped out of my master's when I was 22 to start my first startup. And
before you did all that, like which schools, what are the names of the schools you went to? I missed that.
Is this important? I don't know. Okay.
It is. So, that's what makes Startup Grind. All
right, man.
Everything else we can read online.
I went to Golden Wheels pre-primary school.
Golden Wheels. Then your crash?
Which was commonly, well, it's funny, which was commonly mistaken for a school for mentally disabled children called Golden Steps.
Oh.
So that stood against me. Actually, there's a famous story in my family. I have a brother who's a year and a half old, and the first day I went to creche, it was the day after I got out of nappies. And my first day I went to creche, I punched a kid in the face because he touched my brother's bag. That was the reason given. And later in life, the first time they asked me, when I got home from preschool, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be a boxer.
Oh, wow.
And my mother was terrified. She was distraught, beside herself, because my parents are both doctors.
I see.
And, but lo and behold, I actually became a boxer later. So I'm an amateur now and had a couple fights.
Oh, wow. At least you had like a very clear goal which was attainable as a kid. I know some kids, like, when they say, you ask the kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? He says, I want to be a truck. Or like, I want to be a lion. Like, okay. But at least you wanted to be a boxer. That's really good. And which high school? Is it the same Gordon?
I went to Crawford.
To?
Crawford College.
Okay.
Which was fun because there were girls.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And the came very quickly. Okay. How was your experience at UCT? Like when you did your electrical engineering,
I
computer science?
really enjoyed it. The reason is, so I'm so glad I left home at 18 and I went into res.
Okay.
And I started thinking, you get to interact with people. And it was also, I was a diligent student. So I was the top student of everything I'd done up till that point. Mm. And at UCT was the first time I saw 50s in my report card.
Ah.
And that was a wake-up call and a shock. So it was really good for me. I mean, because I had fun and I partied and I stopped studying and I did all those things that students do. Mm. And then I learned how to cram at the end, right?
Yeah.
But in engineering, which isn't easy. And I suppose you already disarmed me with your questions, Sasha, but I deregistered from maths in my first year. Okay. Which can get you like decapitated in the Indian family, that's a death sentence. Basically, deregistered from maths, you've basically like taken the family honor and squandered it. Yeah. So, but I did it in the second year on top of all my other subjects, and that started getting me entrepreneurial because I had to lie and basically do two subjects on top of each other, and I with charm and skills, I managed to bribe both of the examiners that I was doing their subject and I'd sign off from the other one, but I didn't. And that like started a journey of, of being an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneurship.
Totally.
Entrepreneurship is about finding solutions.
And I passed. Yeah. And it was absolutely illegal to do that, but I passed and I got it done. And it's always better to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
Yeah. Excellent. Before I ask for more... go ahead.
I saw an interesting thing now about entrepreneurs are heroes, and I was thinking about that today. And they're not heroes. Yeah. They're anti-heroes. Mm-hmm. I love the classics. So like, I was reading the Odyssey the other day. Yeah. And I'm talking really the classics. It's just, it's been 10 years in the game. I'm 32 today, so I'm feeling like very much an old-timer.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Thanks,
Come on.
Guys. Thank you. No, thank you, please.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thanks. It really does feel like coming home. I used to go to these events not knowing anyone, no money, no family backing, no connections. And I just started, my whole career started like this meek student going to these events. And I was just thinking, coming back, I don't do this stuff anymore, because we're busy and we've got things to do. But it's like coming home. It really feels that way.
Oh, nice. That's great.
And it's special. So thank you all.
Great.
But back to stories and why entrepreneurs are anti-heroes. It's because, so I was reading the Odyssey, and Odysseus is this guy who goes to war, the Trojan War. Yeah. And he fights and he gets shipwrecked on the way home. And in order to get home, he has to trick and he has to slip and he has to slide, and he's everything except the straight arrow, by the book. Do that if you want to succeed, in good corporate South Africa without the skullduggery, but that's the straight arrow. Entrepreneurs are it's like roller coasters. Yeah. You've got to be a shapeshifter. Yes. There's a good core. The heart's got to be good. Yeah. But you've got to be more of an anti-hero. And the way that the journey breaks you down, and the way you get thrown lemons and you end up in holes that you've got to dig out of, it's a fascinating game, and it's not for everyone. And it takes a lot of sort of guile and courage and frankly stupidity, because it's stupid optimism. Yeah. Which is why you do it, So it's kind of like a snowball in hell concept. It's impossible to win, but we love the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Could we Could you switch on the lights and then dim these lights a little bit? Okay. So what he said was that essentially be like Tyrion Lannister and be like Jon Snow.
Remember what happened to Robb Stark? Don't be Robb Stark.
Don't be Robb Stark. Be Tyrion.
Exactly. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Peter Dinklage, the guy who plays that, and he says, people say he's lucky. Yeah. And this is a thing that comes up often in startups. People say, oh man, that guy's so lucky. Sam Paddock sold his company for 1.5 billion rand. He's so lucky. Yeah. I remember when Sam started that business. Bevan, got invested with Y Group, a billion rand business. I remember when that started. These companies were small. These companies were struggling. These guys had to make compromises. They had to work their asses off. People counted them out multiple times. So luck is a funny thing.
Yeah.
And Peter Dinklage says, lucky, he says, I hate that word lucky. He says, I didn't feel lucky, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, but when I lived in my cheap-ass apartment in Brooklyn, you know, putting quarters together so I could buy food, and I didn't feel lucky when I was turning down commercials to be a leprechaun when I wanted to hone my craft as an actor. I don't feel lucky at all. He said, maybe I've been lucky to be around great people and to have met them and they met me. And you know, business is a lot like that. It's about timing. If you stay in the game and you stay at the table long enough, eventually your number's going to hit. But I will say you will lose more than you win.
That's excellent because it's true. Like, I think that entrepreneurship is almost like you're wearing beautiful shoes, but they're too tight, you know? Or like you got wonderful heels, but
I feel it's more like Chinese foot binding.
Yeah, like that. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
it hurts
and
like a bitch.
goes like,
and eventually it's going to be illegal.
That's right. But everybody keeps saying like, wow, your shoes are gorgeous, your heels, but you're like, I'm in pain.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but tell us about your journey, like building Personera or moving from graduating, that journey, the leap.
Wow. Well, you know, the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think about journeys and startups, I just keep going back to the best piece of advice I ever received from a mentor in my life. And he sat me down and he said, Sheraan, he said, son, don't marry for money. Hang around rich girls and marry for love.
Great.
And that's been the tale of my career. Sadly, not my personal life, but my career. But, you know, it's a funny thing. So we've got love and we've got money.
Yes.
And what are we doing this for, right? Are you doing it for money or are you doing it for love? And I can promise you, if you do it for money, you'll have a very sad outcome. And if you do it for love only, you'll have a very sad outcome. It'll be a romantic tragedy, I guarantee it. So my first startup was a Shakespearean play. I just managed to win in the end. But it was tough. I mean, I had the idea. I was a social media geek, traveling a bit and doing a bit of consulting here and there. And the Facebook platform API was released in 2008. And I thought, I wonder if you could take the content from Facebook and put that into a personalized printed product like a calendar, a photo book, or a greeting card, or a wedding invitation. And it turns out it was possible. We filed patents. I was on top of the world. Raised money from Vinnie Lingham when I was 22. We and friends won the Enablers competition, riding high. Released the product, the world's first personalized printed calendar, personalized with Facebook photos and for your friends' birthdays, and photo book later. And we were the first in the world to do that. We beat the guys in Silicon Valley. And we were covered on TechCrunch the day we launched, September 12, 2009. Wow. I remember our first order came from a guy in Pakistan. That should have been a sign. But, so I was high. I flew a week and a half later to Facebook. The head of growth said he loves it. We were the first African country to partner with Facebook, a company to partner with Facebook in Africa. And then all hell breaks loose. Why? We didn't have any sales for 2 years. I was running an e-commerce business where people didn't want to buy what we sold. So I built a product that I was in love with. That was a great idea. I could sell the idea. I had patents for the idea. I was in America impressing people. Everyone believed, but the consumer didn't believe enough to vote with his cash. And that started a series of hard pivots. And we ended up raising a lot of money. We changed the platform. And long story short, I mean, when I was 24, 25, I was doing retrenchments. It was tough. It was really tough. I ended up, the day that I retrenched my co-founder, and he took a package because he knew that the writing was on the wall. I'll never forget it. This was in July 2011.
Yeah.
I flew to America on a one-way ticket. I liquidated my life savings, and I went onto a zero salary. And the other day, I was looking at my personal goals, and my goal in 2011 was to earn a salary by the end of the year. That was my personal goal. It's poignant stuff, but I couldn't believe it when I read it again.
It's still one of my goals still.
Yeah. So, my apologies. So, that's absolutely true. And I was broke. And 3 months later, we'd raised more funding. I'd partnered with Xerox, and I rescued the company in the States because there was no market in South Africa for what we were doing. We were doing a niche business. But by the time we sold, we did a deal with the Girl Scouts of America. We had literally hundreds of thousands of children selling our products across the US, which would be illegal here, but in America, it's perfectly legal. In fact, they encourage it, so that was good. And then we exited. The funny story of the exit of that was, so we used to license the software, and I remember we had this customer, and this guy was a great guy, and one day he sent me an email saying, Sheraan, my company's run out of money. I can't license your software. And I remember the pain, because I'd run out of money so many times in the startup. I've never missed a payroll in my career, but I've run out of money many times, and you've put it on the line many times, right? Where the real stress is your staff, and then the investors. You come last. But anyway, he said, I've run out of money, and I felt for him. And, at that time, our software was about 4,000 US a month, to license. And I said, Travis, you know what? I'm going to continue to offer you the software. We don't make money out of this. In fact, my COO, our COO, Taslim Williams is somewhere in the back. He was with me at the time. He's moved through the companies with me, which is an amazing thing in this day and age, considering Standard Bank keeps poaching all our good talent. But and I'm happy to say many of my alumni are at your bank. But I said, okay, Travis, we're going to continue to license the software. And he was in the States. And 2 years later, when our company was hitting a wall and my investors said, find a buyer, we ended up stumbling onto a massive opportunity. He was doing great. He was flush. He'd come back. He'd bounce back. And he was the one who bought my company.
Oh, that's excellent. And this is...
And I don't know how that works, but that's a special story.
Yeah.
So what brought me back? Well, I wanted to do something in a big market. I want to do something I really enjoyed in a big market. Be passionate, but look for money, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be fun. And my parents are both doctors, and I just felt what I'd learned through my first career with my old business. We had to go through so many pivots, hard pivots, change, reinventing ourselves. And the reason, I had 3 co-founders. I was the last guy standing just because I'm dumb and I don't know how to die. The best essay I've ever read on entrepreneurship is called Don't Die, Not Dying by Paul Graham. He wrote that in 2007. It was a talk, and that's my Bible.
Yeah.
It's very rare that guys go down dying to a fanfare. They crawl off quietly and disappear. So just keep talking, and it's a two-way feedback loop. You can't fail. Failure is not an option. You should know how to fail. So anyway, the second time around, I realized when you pivot, you fall over things and you change. But now if you choose a big market that's exciting and interesting and complex, you're going to fall into profit pools everywhere you look, as opposed to deserts. And that's why I chose healthcare as a market. And that's how we built this marketplace business called RecoMed, which is like hotels.com for doctors and health providers, empowering a lot of the platforms. And it's working. It took time. The thing I didn't calculate is it took 3 times as much money and time as I predicted. But it works, and it's going well.
So, and before I delve deep into that, to talk a little bit about the iterations and pivots and some of these like startup jargon. So like yesterday, one of the World Bank people just said, I didn't know what Series A meant. So now with startups and entrepreneurship, is that when you are looking for trying to refine your idea, you are making iterations, right? And then when you say, look, this idea is not going to work, we need to change and do something different, that's a pivot. And so how did you like, how do you handle those? When do you know when to continue or persist or pivot?
That's a great question. So pivot just means change. It means reinvention. In order to change and reinvent, you need to realize that you're fundamentally failing. Something is very broken. The problem is when you've laid it all on the line, here's the hardest thing in this entire game, is that a bunch of experts are going to constantly tell you you're fucked, right? They're going to say that this is not working.
Yeah.
And they believe it. They're not trying to be bad guys, but it's because it looks like shit because you have no traction.
Yeah.
And only the entrepreneur knows where they stand. And you need to listen to the external voices. But I would say most of the great businesses that exist today, if they listened all the time, they wouldn't exist at all.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to know when to listen and smell the coffee, and you need to know when to ignore those people. And that's difficult. But, you know, and there's no simple answer to that, right? You've got to understand it. And the best way to do that, I'd say, for entrepreneurs is do your homework and be scientific. The passion for what you do will keep you going, keeps you waking up in the next day, because you just get beaten up and you go for round after round. In fact, they said there's the only two emotions. Mark Andreessen said this, founder of Andreessen Horowitz and Netscape. He said the only two emotions in startups is euphoria and terror, and a lack of sleep enhances them both. You know? And it's exactly true. So you'll go through that. Now, what one of my mentors said to me recently about something, because we're changing something in our business model to explode, to dramatically increase growth, and there's some pain there. And he said, Sheraan, you can tell me that this is a dog all day long. You can say, this is a dog, that is a dog, and this is a chicken, right? So he said, you can call a chicken a dog till you blue in the face, but at the end of the day, it still lays an egg, right? And I looked at it, I was like, I don't really get it. He says, like, let me do it differently. Let me say it differently. And then I got it. And he said, you're giving me stats. And I said, yes. And he said, okay, so statistically, there's 50% females and males in South Africa. I said, yes. And he said, so statistically, every South African has one testicle and one boob. That's true. I said, yes. He said, how does that help you run a business? Then I got it. So you've got to look at things in a certain way and conclude when it's time to change. And I can't tell you how to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And then now moving to the Springlab and the founding of that. Did you start it with your own money from Personera, or how did that journey pan out?
So Personera, we actually did, I think possibly the first all-stock shares for shares acquisition. We needed Reserve Bank approval. Never been done before, so we're all shareholders in this US company. I look forward to my SARS audits every year as a result of that. But so we came back. I mean, the reason I came back is because, first of all, it had been 6 years, and I wanted to go onto the board and give this new journey. There was a new CEO, very different to me, very different direction. And you can't have two cooks in the kitchen. So I declined the SVP role, and I said I want to go home. Also, you know, as a personal side, everywhere I went, and some people, it still bothers me to this day. They go, Sheraan, you're back. I thought you were away. And every friend I had would say, hey, Sheraan, how long are you in town for? Or, hey, Sheraan, when are you leaving again? And anyone who's traveled a lot will know exactly what I'm talking about. It just like takes your soul after a while. Because you're a nomad. You're a citizen of nowhere. And I decided to come back because I felt that, in general, there was an opportunity across sort of 3 points in a triangle in South Africa, and that is product quality, ability to build a great product, ability to raise funds successfully, and ability to put together and manage a team. There's not a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs yet. And I think it's great that, you know, people are coming up, because now we're in the third generation since the Personeras and the Fire IDs and all those ones that went big and went bust in the old days. We're almost in the third generation of funding rounds now. So there's a lot more school fees being paid in seasoned entrepreneurs. I think it's amazing. But I figured, well, let's try something hard, like a platform business that can dominate market share. It's something different. I didn't have to stay in the States, because I would have had to work for the other company for the green card for a while. And I think that you can create a lot of value. Now, with Springlab, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I said, let me create an umbrella company with a holding company with some capital behind it. And we will invest in platform companies and start our own. And we started RecoMed very quickly. made 1 or 2 investments, and then I invested in some other guys, and I quickly realized like I hated it. I wanted to get involved. I was so frustrated. So within about 250K of those investments, we shut them down, and I just focused on being an entrepreneur, not an investor. So I learned my lesson, and I very much respect all the investors and venture capitalists out there. It's a very hard job, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be taking questions from the audience. So if you've got a question, you can put your hand up and to give you a mic, and then we'll continue the conversation, right? And then, okay, there's a question there. But before we get to your question, Riri, okay, you got the mic? The mic is coming. And maybe, okay, it's here already.
Hi, Sheraan. So I have a lot of entrepreneur friends. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I think one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs feel, particularly when you have to pivot, is that, oh my gosh, my friends are going to think I'm starting something new again, and then I'm going to look like a failure, like, oh, the next idea again. How did you weather that when you had to pivot so many times in order to find something that works?
So I think the most underrated quality and the quality the least spoken about is what gets you through that. So I believe after everything I've seen, a successful entrepreneur, founder needs 3 qualities. The first is ability, and that includes study. So you've got to do your homework. I mean, please guys, there's so much knowledge out there. Read it, do your reading, do your homework, and no one's going to respect someone who's not prepared. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is value systems. It's very simple. Don't be a dick, and don't steal. Okay, those are the 2 value systems. Sometimes you see when a lot of money is on the table, people behave very differently, and it's no good. What I always like to remember there is what Warren Buffett says about creditworthiness. He said, reputation is like virginity. It's really easy to maintain, but very difficult to get back once you've lost it. Right. Third thing. The third thing, which is the most underrated, I think. Everybody knows you need a good reputation. The thing that's the most underrated, frankly, is resilience, stickability. And there's no easy answer. I didn't go play golf. I used to go to movies on my own compulsively because I had to get my mind off the world, and it was the only way I could disconnect. And I would gorge myself on food while I sat in a movie, and I gained 25 kgs more than I weigh now. And I came back and I lost that weight, but I almost had lost myself to diabetes and you name it. So there is no easy answer. I woke up once or twice saying it's done, I'm finished. And those were tough days, and I just managed somehow to crawl out. And I think that's the difference maker. It's not easy. I don't have an easy answer to that. So how do you do it? Well, one, try to surround yourself with positive people. But the problem is your best friends. I mean, in this game, the best people, your spouse, your husband, are going to be like, what the hell are you doing, Again. And you know what the worst part is? 95% of the time, they're going to be right because we're going to fail, It's like, I mean, it's unbelievable. The failure rates in this game, it's hard. It's just hard. It's not easy. There's no silver bullet. So what you got to do is try to be positive, but you've got to pump yourself up. Why do you think I'm so full of these bullshit stories and quotes and sayings and stuff? Because I used to read them all the time. There was no one singing to me in the corner, and I don't really know what else to say. It's really tough. I think you've got to hate. You've got to have a visceral detest for failing. I think of entrepreneurs as machines that are programmed for relentless forward motion. And don't know how to take a step back. It's maniacal, it's pathological, but that is how you succeed. There's nothing timid about this game. Now I'm getting worked up now, so I'll stop.
Great, I agree with you that a lot of factors, and having the right partner also is significant. For me, if I didn't have the wife that I have, I wouldn't survive.
My partner left me, man.
Oh.
It's part of the journey.
It's part of the journey.
Okay, but yeah, it's true. It's part of the journey. So
things change.
Cold, single, and childless is a worthy endpoint. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. That's my wife, by the way.
Congratulations, you're a lucky woman.
Yeah. So, how do you balance now, like coming to pitching, raising funds? It's such
Don't leave him.
hard. She's not
It's a
gonna
bit of a
leave
nervous
me.
laugh there.
Yeah. If she leaves me, I'm gonna live with half of what she's got. Yeah. So right now I can't afford
That's
to
why I
leave.
started. You see, I'm glad you interpreted when I was talking about equality
Yes.
in the beginning. Thank you for bringing that up.
Exactly.
Men should be equal to women in this game.
Absolutely. Great. Now, on the question of pitching, like people, they're entrepreneurs who are trying to pitch all the time and then they're struggling because you're trying to pitch and then the business is not running. And then the others who are running the business are not even bothered with the pitching. And then on both sides, on like, oh, those are pitch entrepreneurs. They're just looking pitch competition after competition, like, and raising money. I also know that the media gives a lot of attention to raising money as opposed to actually having traction. So their companies, like, they raise so much, You're like, wow, wow, wow. What have they done? Nothing. Have they sold anything? No, not yet. And then they get another evaluation and they're unicorns. And so how did you balance? You raised a lot of money from the time you started and then you got traction. How did you balance those two things?
Yeah, probably about 50 million. Okay, so look, what I would say is on my watch, off my watch more. Okay, so what I would say is and this is an important. Funding is oxygen. It allows you to breathe for a little bit longer. So you've got an oxygen tank. You're underwater. You're at the bottom of the ocean with the oxygen supply. Funding just fills up your tank a bit more. You've got more breaths to take, but you're still hunting for treasure. Okay, and if you don't, you die, because then you're probably going to find the treasure. If you're in a swimming pool, you're gonna come up and say, screw this. So all funding is time. They talk about runway. The reason they talk about runway is because a runway is in an airport. It gives the plane that's heavy more time to lift off. That's all funding is. So when I say, look, I just raised 10 million, it's not, having experience, I don't celebrate, and I should. My team really crapped me out of this. They're like, one day they actually got together, they sat me down, they said, Sheraan, you don't fucking celebrate anything, you wear us down, we need to like celebrate the good times, because I don't, and because all I see is I'm on the hook for 100 million in return. Like, oh God, what have I done?
Again.
Yeah, done it again. I'm in debt. I'm underwater. Look at that. So, truthfully, and that's true, because these people who invest are not stupid, and they expect they want their returns. So, and you can't blame them either. That's the game we play. They're not there to be your friend. So what I would say is it's oxygen and it's time, but of course, in this game, funding is a sufficient, in engineering, we'd call it a sufficient condition for success. It is not a necessary condition.
Okay.
You need growth and traction. And what I would define there is sort of strong growth with strong unit economics. If you're doing that on a scalable business, you're flying away. If you're hiding skeletons and you're screwed up, you're not. And look, fundraising is a kind of success because people do not part with after-tax income. These are experts. They don't do it for companies that are typically for shit companies or for companies that are pretending.
Yeah.
They do their homework.
It's validation.
And it absolutely is a form
great.
of validation, but it is not a sufficient condition for success. And I do personally think it's overhyped and over-celebrated, but that's me. And you don't want to end up like me, because I'm a shadow of the ebullient young man I used to be 10 years ago. So don't end up like that. And it's important, and I think it should be. I think that entrepreneurs who raise should be proud of it, but just realize the clock starts ticking then, and you've got to do something. Another thing on funding is people often make the mistake of they think they need to raise as much as they can for as little bit of equity as possible. Now, I'm not saying that you should raise with predatory investors, but you must remember that fundraising is a series of stages where you're going to have to raise a second, third, fourth, fifth round. Because in South Africa, we don't do seed, series A, B, C. It doesn't work like it does in the US typically, because there's just less liquidity and less experienced capital pools, and our market size is smaller, even if you're selling software internationally. So you're looking at a series of rounds and bridge rounds in between. So you might do 8 funding rounds, for example. And if that's true, what you want to do is every round needs to happen at a slightly higher or a significantly higher valuation. You double the valuation every time. And often entrepreneurs don't think about that.
Yeah.
And if you get your economics wrong at the beginning, you're screwed because then you're going for a down round in your second round.
Could you take us through that? I know like
So
entrepreneurs who are not like looking into pitching and finding they don't go and just start reading up on those series, the pre-seed, the seed and all that.
So I always advise in this game to start your first raise to give you 18 months of runway. That's 18 months capital. So you do your budget. Whatever you think it'll take to get to the revenues you think, first of all, halve your revenues and double the time, okay? Just do that because it'll happen. It's not about you. The market is slow. The people around you won't buy because you're not that important to them right now. And it's going to remain that way for a long time. Anyone here with a business knows this. They don't give a shit. They get their salary at the end of the day. They don't need to get out of bed for you. And that takes time. So, and I'll talk about what I learned in the US about speeding that process up. So what you've got to do is then, I think you need at least 18 months to be able to get to your second round. And you must spend money slowly in the beginning, and then you spend faster as you go. So you do your product dev, and what you need to do is get at least one customer. Get a prototype out and get at least one customer before that money is spent. What you have to do at that point is, let's say you raised at a 4 million rand valuation, you raised R1 million, so then your final, that partner came in at 1 out of 5, so you got 20%. So then what you want to do is say, okay, now maybe I'm going to double the valuation of the company, so I'm going to raise my second 2 million at an 8 million pre, which is a 10 million post, so I've doubled the value of the company, and then that investor gets 2 out of 10, which is 20%. And then you keep doing that as you go. I mean, we can play with these numbers, but those are fairly reasonable numbers. And they have to happen typically in 12 to 18 month milestones until you break even, and then you've got some time. Some companies reach break even pretty quickly. Some take 7 years to reach break even. It depends on the type of business. But if you haven't predicted that game, essentially you're saying, if you haven't created enough traction to create an uptick in value, one day that bill is going to come due. You're going to need to raise money. A new investor is going to say, your company's not worth 8, your company's worth 2. What will happen then is your previous investors get aggrieved because their stock value, which was just worth 1 million rand or whatever, is now suddenly worth, their shares are suddenly worth 700,000 rand. And then it creates a very difficult dynamic in dealing with those investors. And there's various mechanisms you can use to manage the process. But I find that structuring a company badly in the beginning often hurts the entrepreneurs.
Okay, great. We'll take some more questions. Yes, Aneme.
Yo, how's it?
Where are you?
Yeah, at the back.
Hi.
I'm semi-invisible. So I just wanted to ask, so you mentioned, you're 22, your company just got off, you flew to the US, but you didn't make any sales for 2 years, right?
Nothing meaningful.
Yeah, so like in that context, to everybody else who's following you and is giving you support and all of that stuff, and then there's the romanticization of entrepreneurship, and they think, oh my God, this guy is in America, he's at Facebook, all of that stuff. How do you then deal with that discrepancy of reality of you not having made that many meaningful sales and yourself versus the perception that people have of you? Just from the psychological aspect, do you feel like that's something that adds pressure or?
Yes, I think it does. I think that as an entrepreneur, if you're not very comfortable with the idea of cognitive dissonance, you're not going to make it. Cognitive dissonance means having two absolutely contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. And one is that because also people can smell a fake. So they say fake it till you make it. Yeah, it's true. But it's got to be this authentic vision of yourself in the future that you sell today while you and whoever's at home knows you're screwed, and that what you're doing is impossible. Because logically, it is impossible. So I'm here saying we're going to take over the world and create all this return, and it's going to be fantastic. And I know it's impossible because all my experiences until now show that there's like a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, but but that's closing. That window's closing, right? That's it. I mean, it's cognitive dissonance. That's why I say you've got to be stupid. You've got to be a crazy fool, but a very smart crazy fool. Otherwise, you can't make it. So, again, I think fake it till you make it is an important concept. I think you must be authentic because people will smell bullshit quick and they're not going to trust you. So, essentially, in America, what I learned when I went on, I was very lucky to spend 2 years going like 60 cities with Xerox Corporation's top salespeople with my previous company. We partnered with them. And I learned a lot from these guys. The guys were 60, 70 years old, and we used to just sell all day long. Now, of course, I was an engineer, so this was some new territory for me. And they told me two things. They said, Sheraan, and this is where I learned not to apologize. Because in South Africa, there's this massive problem. There's a disease among entrepreneurs and buyers. And that is, I'm embarrassed about what I have, the entrepreneur. And the buyer is, I'm bigger than you, I'm more important than you, and you're shit. Okay? So I'll do you a favor. Right? Doesn't work like that in America. The tables are a lot more even because people know entrepreneurs can come out of anywhere and be bigger than them overnight. And their friends can succeed. So they take you a bit more seriously. People fail. I mean, there's high churn. People don't get funded. It's not easier to raise funding there. But their respect is different for the entrepreneur. Now, as a result, if you're meek and timid, you'll never get sales. So in America, they taught me how to be confident in my product. And they said, Sheraan, you know what? We all know this is a pig. But we perfume the pig. Okay. When we go into the sale.
And put lipstick on it.
We put lipstick on the bride. We perfume the pig. You set the table. So I learned the art of telling the truth, but managing the facts, managing information. That doesn't sound like lying, does it?
The truth.
Right? I'm a master at saying things that are true. And my team respects this, but it's part of the game. And then you patch what's not true, and you always deliver on your sale. Okay? So that's how you do it. You've got to have that belief and that faith and that confidence. But when you go home, I mean, you've got to be realistic. And that's where the humility is important. I mean, if you really think, and you know what, I was humbled. I mean, I thought I was unbreakable until I was broken into little pieces. Startup is, I always think, it's the Mickey Rourke of Hollywood. It just breaks you down and breaks you down in a weird way. That's how I feel, at least.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, there's a question there. I think cognitive dissonance is the reason why entrepreneurs drink so much. In trying to suppress that.
Yeah, I mean, you find a lot of entrepreneurs are like into drinking, or they're into food, or they're into some kind of crazy exercise like mountain biking.
So much.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty fanatic. Like often they're fairly obsessive, fanatical people. Often. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the question there.
Good day, everybody. Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And thank you so much, Sheraan. I love the model Antihero. Very interesting. But for me, entrepreneurs are really heroes. Really, really heroes. Just two questions from me. My name is Hepo. When you look at South Africa, you look at Cape Town, you look at Joburg, you look at Durban, you look at Kimberley, you look at Klerksdorp, you look at Lusikisiki. Is there what you see as exciting in terms of there's something you see that's exciting, this is a real opportunity, this can really just explode, just your own, because you're an entrepreneur, you hang out with entrepreneurs, you get pitches all the time and so on. That's the first one. Now the second one, I like the example you gave on in America, the respect they have for entrepreneurs. Now you've got Sandra, I assume he's the president of this country. Give him advice, what do we do?
Okay. I love those questions. Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So the first one, if we're looking for markets, I would say if you're focusing on South African market, focus on a painkiller and not a vitamin. A painkiller is something that I have to take. So if I don't take my painkiller and I've got back pain, I die. A vitamin, well, maybe, and we're not the kind of market where vitamins do well. It's a nice to have. So you want to have a must-have where you really feel people can't survive without this, particularly in a market like ours where we're in the darkest business times, both locally and globally, in a very long time. It's definitely winter, And in winter, people need food.
Winter is coming.
Right? It's here. So, so we need, when people are starving, they need food. But so you want to focus on a need, painkiller, not a vitamin. Then secondly, you want something a lot of South Africans can use. Typically, I find that, 3 sectors that are obviously hot and interesting, very complex and difficult because of the nature of business and corporate sales cycles, but education, healthcare, and banking, fintech. Those are 3 big sectors that are going to do great in South Africa. Now, and there'll be a lot of losers and there'll be some massive winners. Secondly, we've got a huge amount of intellectual property and talent. I mean, we've got smart people. And as much as we can say our education system's going to the dogs, one thing I loved about UCT, I sat in that class and there were coloreds, whites, Indians, and black people next to me, and we were all killing it in engineering. So I could see more engineers being produced, right? I saw it with my own eyes. So as much as we say times are dire, things are getting better and worse at the same time, you see? Now, what's that talent doing? They're building things. And South Africa's changed the world a couple times. I mean, I hate to say it, but you know what we're most famous for in the US? The creepy crawly. Everybody knows the creepy crawly. That's about it. And maybe now Elon Musk. But there will be new innovation. And as a result, so if you can create a niche business that's a specific product with great IP and sell that globally, that's great as well. And a lot of guys are doing that. So I would do that. And then in terms of government, so I sat on a panel recently. I got into a lot of trouble because it was with the small business minister. And they said, how can they help entrepreneurs? And I said, well, very simple. Stay out of our way. No new laws. I'd like to see an annual net reduction in laws. Scrap acts. Stop trying to help. They get in the way, causing a lot of trouble. It's no good. I mean, that said, and the environment. I mean, obviously, if you want me to be specific, look, the labor regulations make it very difficult to employ. It's an active disincentive to employ people, especially at the lower incomes. I can promise you, most entrepreneurs are not actively trying to employ at the low levels. See, the high-paid guys, the great developer can go tomorrow and get a job, no problem. The guy who's earning 6K, 8K, 10K a month to work in a call center, you want to automate those things because you're worried about the legislation. So the people who need the help the most are getting left behind, first of all. That's happening. The second thing is, the so-called industrialist programs and all that stuff, it doesn't really help with global competitiveness. There's this thing, entrepreneurship doesn't help anyone learn to do anything. It just sets us back. So we've got to open up that economy. I mean, personally, I am a fan of transformation because I think that the deck is stacked both against women and against previously disadvantaged. But I'm very glad they're moving away from equity ownership-based transformation and into management position-based transformation, which is forcing organizations to mentor and train talent. Right? That I'm very happy about. And then finally, I think if government wants to do something, all they should do while they're cutting up laws is they should commit capital, match capital to the private sector. And there is some momentum in that area, but do not let government manage it because that's not what they do. It's not what they're good at. We need government for our public services, not to tell us how to create great small businesses. And it's not working. So that's what I would say.
Oh, that's brilliant. You should be president. There's actually a vacancy next door. So.
No comment.
All right, next question. Yes,
I enjoy my head being attached to my shoulders. Thank you very much.
We're not taking over, we're just removing. Yes, there's a question there.
Hi, I just want to ask a quick equity-based question. Considering that most entrepreneurs are quite driven by ideas and often emotionally attached to their ideas as well, and investors are more bottom-line driven, yes, we should use our forecast models to see what equity we're willing to give away, but could you maybe give us some tips on what we should look out for when we're playing in the field of someone who is bottom line driven entirely in terms of equity?
Sure. it took a long time to realize this for me, but ideas are worthless. I mean, if you've got an idea to send, cargo to Mars and it all works, I still think it's worth. I still won't pay for it. I won't value it.
Please say that again. Like a lot of people don't get that.
Ideas are absolutely important. They're the seeds, but people invest in plants, not seeds. Okay, and because you need to water it, and a lot of things need to go right. The soil's got to have nutrients. So ideas are not worth anything. What is worth something is you and your track record as an entrepreneur, the quality of your preparation, and then simply what you can demonstrate. And what you can demonstrate before you've got money is you can demonstrate a letter of intent from a potential customer. You can demonstrate the technical framework of what you're trying to do and why it's novel, interesting, and possible. Maybe there's some IP registration there. Maybe there's a prototype. Maybe there's a contract where the customer says, if you build this, I will order it from you. And maybe you've already got intent from teams saying, if you raise funding, we'll come on. I'm a developer, I'll join you. And I'm a marketer and I'll join you. So there's the team. This is something that that an investor can invest in. But if you say, I've got this amazing idea and this amazing model, I don't think anyone's going to want to pay for that. That's when you go to your friends and family, because maybe mom or dad will feel kind, or maybe a friend will feel kind, but typically a professional investor won't. And you've just got to hustle and scratch until that point.
Can I rephrase the question?
Yes.
You have a plant. It creates revenue. What should we look out for with an equity-hungry investor?
I think then, yes. So then, remember what I said around the stages and milestones. So if your equity-hungry investor, and first rule, run from assholes. There's a few, there's not many. I mean, I think investors, they're all trying to make a return. It's a hard game. You got to be brave to be a startup investor, because you would have lost most of your money if you're doing it in this country, right? They're very brave, and I think they deserve more credit than they get, frankly. It's not that they won't fund us. No, they're looking for good investments, and they damn well want the entrepreneurs to succeed. But there is a percentage of predatory guys who don't understand startup, and there's some people who are just assholes, right? You need to run away, because they'll put a poison pill in your company and it'll never be possible to recover. So you've got to choose the people you work with. Take longer to get your milestones, but be very careful about character analysis on who you work with. Because a lot of investors, and what I mean is a minority, but it's a known thing in private equity. What they'll do is they'll come in small and they'll give you enough money and they'll sign off on the plan knowing that you'll run out of money. And then when you run out, they'll say, no problem, we'll back you. And then the day you need the money, the terms are atrocious, Or they'll do something like securitize your IP. Say, if you fail, I own the IP, so I'll give you the $1 million, but I need the IP. And then what you'll find is, like, when it's time to exit, they won't approve the sale, because that way your company liquidates, they get the IP and they leverage a better position. So you see all these tricks, right? You want to stay away from those people. I think what's fair to the investor and what's fair to you might be different. You need to meet in the middle, but I'd say there's a lot of fair people out there. And we can't do this without investors, and I think most of them are fair. And I just think you need to assess whether what they're coming in at allows you, assuming your results are 2 or 3 times worse than you think, because 90% of the time they are, can you still make those stages? And that is a two-way street. Can I return value for this investor? If she invests, will she get richer on the next round? And will I have enough left so that by round 3, I can't raise because I only have 5% of my business left? You've got to balance those two. No, yeah.
Great. Yes, there's a question there.
I'm on, yeah. Just a question on protecting IP. You've mentioned it a few times. So when you don't have a plant and you've only got a seed, and now you're going out and you're trying to find people that can help you do a bit of gardening. Can you sort of just advise on how best to protect IP?
Yeah, I mean, well, thank you so much for continuing my metaphor. We need to have a cup of coffee sometime. So, you get me. No, so look, honestly, I don't think you can protect IP. I mean, obviously, you don't open your code base to the internet, but if you can't execute what you're doing better than everybody else, there's nothing you can do. I mean, you've got to out-execute. And what I find is that most people don't care that much. I mean, even if it's a phenomenal idea, occasionally ideas do get stolen, occasionally. So you shouldn't open the gates to someone who could be a direct competitor, like a company. And that can always get tricky if you want to sell an idea to a corporate and maybe they look at it. But in my experience, both corporates as well as the other entrepreneur next door, they're just too focused on other stuff to do it. So you've got to just take that risk. And I'd advise, if you're not sure between taking that risk or keeping your cards to the chest, and I kept I was in stealth mode when I first did it, and I turned around completely on that. I don't believe in that anymore. I think you should just show people your cards and pretend and hope and believe that you're the best at what you're doing and will win in the end.
Yes, I totally agree that for the most part, sharing your ideas, you get feedback very quickly. Like you say, this is what I'm thinking about. Somebody say, oh, have you looked at that? Oh, talk to this guy and talk to that. And it shortcuts your process.
Your best defense is traction. When you have so much momentum, you become an unstoppable force. No one can compete. Then they partner. Absolutely. And what I always did in the beginning, even still when I came back, people laugh you off. You kind of have to leave them with this idea. It's like Inception, but you've got to leave them with this idea that the bus is left and we can get on the bus. But when they say no and they tell you to piss off and it's not going to work, you double back every 6 months to 12 months. And within the third year, they join. When they see that and you tell them, look, I'll catch you in a year and show you what we've done. People all join. They become believers, often your strongest ones. But in terms of protection, honestly, NDAs are great and copyright is great, but we don't have the money to sue and defend in court.
Great. Thank you very much, Ran. I think this has been super, super insightful, very educational, very inspiring as well. And I know there are lots of questions that people would like to ask you. So if you're staying for another hour, that would be awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll continue to network. I think there's still some more drinks, more food maybe. And then we'll continue to know each other, talk to people that you don't know. And thank you very much. Big hand for Chicago.
Thank you.